Hey everyone, welcome to Logan Smosh Pig. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Let's launch into a new episode of Rock and Read. They say that two are better than one, so today you will get to hear Chapter 37 and Chapter 38 of Iron Man by the riffmaster from Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi. Why don't we dive in to Chapter 37? We said to each other, does anybody know what's going on? Has anybody seen any accounts? None of us knew how much money we had because it was always a case of anything you wanted, you got. We'd phone Meehan up and any money we wanted, I'll arrange it. Sometimes Meehan sent a check and the bloke at the bank would go, it's bounced. Eh? And I'd phone him up. Oh, I'll put it in again. Go and put it in again now. It's all right. He was very careful. He always had a wad of cash in his pocket. Never used a credit card. I think because that way, he wouldn't have any kind of record of what was being spent. That's the way he worked. We thought, why can't we just have a lump sum put into our bank so we know how much we have and work with that? We met these people in the office one day, and Meehan said, these are your accountants. They are going to look after all your stuff. You talk to them. Don't talk to me. Talk to them. And then all our money went to the accountants. We never had it coming to us direct. We'd have these meetings with them, and they'd say, you can't just get everything you make and put it in the bank. We want to take some of your money and put it in a Jersey account because of the tax. We just said, oh well. We didn't know anything about that side of it, and it all seemed above board. When somebody from a big accountancy firm tells you what they're going to do with your money, you go along with it. We found out later that they also worked for Meehan. And then, when we found out that our management contracts with Meehan weren't signed by him, they were only signed by us, that was even worse. He really caught us with that one, a trick from the early days. We were so gullible about everything. All we wanted was to play and tour everywhere and go to America and all that. That's why in the beginning, we never questioned Meehan's way of doing things. And of course, most of the time, we were on tour, so we didn't require much. It's only when we came out for another break that we went, I want to buy a new house, or whatever it might be. Or he'd go, I'll send another 10 grand down, and everything would be roses. We started seeing things change a lot at the office. When we got involved with Patrick Meehan at first, it was just him. Then he got more money and bought companies like NIMS, the old Beatles thing, Brian Epstein's label. He also got on board with David Hemmings, the actor famous for the movie Blow Up, with a company called Hemdale. So then, Meehan was also making movies. One day he said to me, I'm auditioning today. I've got all these women coming around. I came downstairs and saw this whole queue of gorgeous women outside the office. And he got into a building company, housing, and all that stuff. Of course, when we bought houses, we bought them through this company. Meehan was involved with so much stuff, I could never tell what it all was. He even bought a racehorse called Black Sabbath and a racing car as well. We were seeing him flying around in private jets, and he'd always have the latest Rolls Royce, and so would we if we wanted them. So, we didn't argue. We were told that all the money was put in the London and County Bank, which went bust at the end of the day. And apparently, our money disappeared with it. We really started to think when we saw what we thought was a bunch of pretty unsavory characters getting involved with Meehan and NIMS. These people were nice enough with us, but it made us very nervous. I think David Frost, the very well-known TV personality, was a client, and Dave Hemmings also. Eventually, when we went on tour in Europe, one of them came with us. Willie, his name was. Maybe he was there to make sure nothing happened to us. Or maybe he was seeing what we were up to, spying for the mob or whoever they were. It was a bit frightening, certainly when one fan tried to approach us and Willie intervened. It was really heavy. We hadn't a clue about what was going on. The fact that Meehan was gambling like there was no tomorrow didn't help either. When we had Yes with us on our American tour, we played Las Vegas. It was a very involved situation. We thought, hell, what's going to happen? How are we going to fight this one? We were unhappy with the situation, so we had to do something about it. We finally decided to leave Meehan. Somewhat surprisingly, he seemed alright about it at first. I think he'd got what he could out of us and was happy to let us go. So many things went on that we were just not aware of, and I think that's why we felt we were screwed over. We sued Meehan, but when it came to it, for whatever reason, which I never really understood, we didn't have a leg to sue on. He sued us in turn, and he won. It seems to me that from the moment we became successful, we've been in court. Jim Simpson sued us after we left him, and that case dragged on forever. The Simpson case only got settled around the time we split up with Meehan, and Simpson was awarded something like £35,000 that we had to pay him. He also sued Meehan, who had to give him a similar amount. So much for the old management, but what about a new one? It was hard to trust anybody. We did have managements approaching us, but how do you know they are straight? In those days, there were no music lawyers you could turn to for advice, people who knew about the business and who could look at the contracts. A lot of the things that were signed back then had loopholes galore. We decided that the only way to do it was to run it ourselves and have Mark Forrester, who already worked for us, do the day-to-day stuff. We just got another accountant and all that rubbish and started again. We had band meetings, but it soon got to be too much for us. We said to each other, look, we're not business people. How are we going to do this? We don't know how this all runs and works. We're musicians, and what are we trying to do? We met with lawyers and accountants. That got boring because we weren't into that stuff at all. Within 5 minutes, Ozzy would be asleep, or he'd stand up and walk around and then go out and come back in and go, we're going to get something to eat or what? Well, we'll end this meeting then. Sit down. All right. He'd sit down for a bit, and then you'd see him fidgeting, and then he'd ask a few questions. Is that it then? We're finished? Mr. Impatient. It was very hard, but we had no option. It was the only thing we could do. Well, that concludes Chapter 37, so let's transition to Chapter 38. At the beginning of 1975, we got together to write and rehearse for what was to become Sabotage. The making of that album took a long time, because we were in the studio one day and in court or meetings with lawyers the next. A writ is a summons to appear in court, and we were being handed writs even while we were working in the studio. It was so distracting. It felt like we were being sabotaged all the way along the line and getting punched from all sides. We were constantly in some problem or another with management or somebody. It made the band into a tighter unit because it was us against them. We were trying to do music, and it was hard to create it in that situation unless we wrote a song about it, which sort of relieved that situation. That's why one track is called The Writ, and the album is called Sabotage. Apart from legal harassment, we were also having technical problems in the studio. We had a hard time recording Thrill of It All, and eventually we got it down after no end of takes. Soon after, we went to a bar across the road to play darts, and Dave Harris, the tape guy, came over and said, "We've got a problem." I said, "What?" He said, one of the technicians has aligned the tapes up on the master tape. You're kidding. I'm not, honestly. Their job was to put this series of reference notes, basically a bunch of beeps going from higher to lower pitch, onto a master tape, so it's all aligned and ready for you to use. You had to, in those days, align the heads and everything, make sure it was all right. He would set it all up on the tape machine and go, "That's fine, you can use it." But he had mistakenly put the tones onto the master tape of Thrill of It All. We listened to the recording of the song, and suddenly it was do, 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 do. He had wiped enough off, so we had to record the whole thing again. It was such an ordeal. We didn't hurt Dave, but did actually give him a nod for his screw-up on the album sleeve. Tape operator and saboteur, David Harris. We produced Sabotage ourselves. The band disappeared most of the time, so it was sort of left to me and the engineer. I got more and more involved with the production side of things, but it wasn't like I would sit there and tell the other guys what to do, because they knew what to play. They put their parts to it. I just spent a lot more time in the studio, because when it came to doing the guitar bits or mixing, it would take longer, and I'd be more into it than they were. I didn't mind so much. I'd be there to the end. Sabotage has a couple of unusual tracks, like Symptom of the Universe. That has been described as the first progressive metal song, and I won't disagree with that. It starts with an acoustic bit, and then it goes into the up-tempo stuff to give it that dynamic, and it does have a lot of changes to it, including the jam at the end. That last bit was made up in the studio. We did the track, and after that finish, we just started jamming. I started playing this riff, the others joined in, we kept it going, and we ended up keeping it. Then I overdubbed it with acoustic guitar. A few things we recorded came from jams like that. We just keep going on the thing, and so the end of the song sometimes became longer than the song itself. A lot of our songs tended to be long anyway, like Megalomania. We carried on and on with that until we just faded it out. Some of those tracks were probably twice as long as you hear on the album, but we had to fade them out. I wrote Super Tsar at home with a Mellotron to create choir sounds. I put heavy guitar to that, and it really blended well. I thought, I'd love to try this in the studio. It would be great if we could use a real choir. So I booked the London Philharmonic Choir. They came down and were all set to go at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Ozzy didn't know anything about this. He walked in, saw all these people, and he walked out again. "Hill, it's the wrong studio." He came back and went, "What's going on? Who are all these people in here?" "We're just trying this song." Oh. This woman came along with a harp, because I had a harp at home, and I could only play ding dong. She said, "What do you want to hear?" "Well, sort of like ding dong. That's what I'm playing." She said, "Something like this." And her fingers flew over the strings. "Yeah, that's it." I felt like such an idiot. What was I doing asking her to play ding dong? But to my knowledge, it had never been done before. A heavy guitar riff with a choir and this harp, it was a challenge. I thought, there's a 50-piece choir here and this harp player. This better work out. But we did it, and it sounded really different and really great. The Sabotage sleeve is probably our most embarrassing one. It had us posing in front of a mirror that reflected the wrong way round. We turned up at this photo session for it, and Bill said, "I don't know what to wear." He turned to his wife. "Can I borrow those tights?" He put her tights on, but he had this checked underwear underneath that was shining through. Typical Bill. Ozzy didn't do much better, dressing up in some sort of Japanese morning gown. I've even heard it being described as in the kimono. Such a naff thing. We're all so different there. Hell, we've had trouble living that down over the years. On Sabotage, the sound was a bit harder than Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and my guitar sound was harder as well. That was brought on by all the aggravation we felt over all the business with management, lawyers, and writs. Sabotage did alright, but it didn't sell as well as the previous albums. It's the way it goes with everybody. You can't go up and up and up. Things go up and down. Other people come in and other music takes over. The taste of people moves, it changes, and yet we still plod on doing what we're doing. Even so, we've been pretty lucky with our fans, because they've been very loyal. We did go through a period, certainly in the Paranoid days, of attracting a lot of screaming teenagers, which wasn't our sort of audience at all. But they go for anything in the top 10. We didn't want to be involved in that because it wasn't us. We weren't about the pretty boy image. It was purely the music for us. That's one of the reasons all our albums kept selling really well after all these years. I can't believe the way it goes. It's just phenomenal. It must be that new fans are coming around to buying it. That completes chapter 38 as well. Let me know what you thought of both chapters in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.